Hey everyone, Temporal here, and today we are going to be answering a question. We had a question about who's more meta right now, Genji or Hanzo, and we're not really going to answer that question. The answer is Hanzo, by the way, so I guess we did answer it. But what we're really going to do is we're going to pivot off of that question and use that question as inspiration for what you saw in the thumbnail there. And that is, why can't we have a Genji meta? Or what would it take for Genji to be meta? Why haven't we seen a Genji meta in such a long time? Or why has it been forever since Genji has seen more than just the tiniest little bit of appearance? And to start with that, we're going to get into sort of figuring out, well, what did it take for Genji to be useful? When was Genji helpful? When was Genji meta? And there's really two good answers to that. But before I get into those, if you haven't already, please do like if you like this type of content and or hit that subscribe button down there. That would be great. So, the places that Genji was meta was sort of during the OG dive, during the original dive days. And what you would see for that composition is you would have, oh, did my Epic Pen shut down? You would have situations where most of the time what you're going to run with is a comp that has, okay, these are good heroes. Yeah, we've got our Winston, we've got our Diva, we've got our Lucio, Anna. That was a thing back then, as opposed to Brig. There was no Brig. And then your Tracer, and then you'd use this flex DPS in sort of a flex DPS way. You go, okay, we're going to go Genji if we're going full dive. We might go Pharah if it's King of the Hill, because on a lot of it, at least on one or 2 points of a lot of King of the Hills, she would do quite well. Maybe we're doing Soldier when his damage was higher, because that was one of the times where they experimented with the 20 damage soldier that we're at again now. Again, that was a time when everyone else's damage, relatively speaking, was a little lower, so that was probably a bigger deal then than it is now. Or Widow, because one shots are still super powerful. So, like, this is what you'd see where you get this situation where, hey, people are going to play Genji because dive is the meta right now. And in those situations where you feel like full dive, which was pretty common, was even most of the times, I'd say, you'd want your Genji. Sometimes you'd go triple DPS here. It depends on your comp, your vision of the game, etc. This was the old Rogue days, triple DPS. This was Apex. This was all pre-Overwatch League. And you might see one of these heroes slotted into this slot instead, in which case you'd get to see full-time Genji. But failing triple DPS, Genji wasn't really full-time. Genji was fulfilling this secondary diver spot where it's like, hey, if we want to go like full dive, actually beat out their poke, because dive beats poke. There was even sort of an understanding of that back then, even if it wasn't perfect. Then you'd go, hey, we want to go ahead and have our secondary diver. Great. If you want some poke to go with your dive, have a little bit of a poke dive hybrid. Maybe you're running one of these three with your tracer. Still, Genji is going to be run, most of the time. That worked pretty well. Genji was happy there. And his role was basically secondary diver, we would say, a second dive DPS. The second time that you saw Genji sort of get close to meta, maybe didn't quite make it, but get close to meta, was when goats first showed up on the scene. You found that, wait a second, one of the methods, there were a few methods to try to beat goats. You saw things that would be like, oh, we're going to go super heavy on quad DPS. You would see things like Hanzo Fair to just try to spam the bejesus out of it. You'd see lots of things like that, but one of the solutions was Cyber Dive. And note, none of these solutions worked absolutely perfectly. Goats did take over the meta, but one of those solutions was Cyber Dive. And the concept behind this was we need extreme amounts of ult power. And where do we get extreme amounts of ult power? Well, EMP to win one fight, and Nano Blade to win the next fight, and then just kind of rotate. Maybe you can't do those quite every single fight, or maybe you can alternate those every single fight, and if you need more ult power because they fill in with ults, well, you've still got Beat on the table. You've still got self-destruct plus primal on the table. You should be able to take things down. It absolutely wasn't perfect, but the thing that Genji was brought for was not his dive power. It was not his dive power. You were not diving goat successfully. What you were looking at was his ult power. So, okay, if he's got a nano and his blade, he's got enough ult power for that to matter. That makes sense. He also works pretty well if you need two divers. Now, there's a little bit of problem with needing two divers, and that is, as people have gotten better at the game, they've figured out that hybrid comps are mostly better than pure comps. a pure dive comp could still be, in theory, Genji Tracer, right? Like, yes, we've got Genji Tracer. That's fantastic. We like that. Except that what you run into is, hey, we would probably be happier with a Tracer Ash. Or you could go, hey, we could run a full Brawl comp with Mei plus Reaper. Well, yeah, you could, but you'd probably be happier off with Mei plus McCree. And oh, well, we could run Moira with our Brawl comp, Moira Lucio with our Reinhardt. You could, but you're probably happier with that BAP who gives you a little bit more poke. Most comps that are successful in their modern era of Overwatch have realized that they want to be able to play into multiple win conditions, even in the neutral, so that no other comp can just go, well, we just beat you. No one wants to fully be able to be stuck playing rock, paper, scissors, where their skill, their being better than the other team can't really show through, and let their rocky scissors beat paper, for example, or let their papery rock beat scissors, whatever the case may be there. So hybrids have sort of become the name of the game, and that does make sense. It ultimately does give you more win condition flexibility. You're able to go, hey, if you're coming at us as a heavy brawl comp and we're a poke dive hybrid, we can try to beat you with our poke elements, use our mobility to stay away from you, beat you with our poke elements, and then go ahead and once we get ahead enough, maybe we'll hit our dive, but we've really beat you with our poke elements at that point. Or if we're a brawl poke hybrid and you are a heavy poke comp, well, we're not going to take a poke battle with you. We're going to go ahead and lean into our brawl elements and play short sight lines as much as we can to get in close and start that brawl from short sight lines without giving you guys much time distance to do work on us. So that didn't work super well for Genji, because if you look at Genji, he's the second choice dive. He's your second choice for a diver behind Tracer in an era where people have moved into hybrids. So if we go over Genji's sort of traits one more time, second dive DPS, okay. Good ult power, yeah, sure. And meh poke. Like, in this era, in the OG dive era, he actually had better poke than Tracer, because Tracer's fall off was actually meaningfully bad. Tracer's fall off has been buffed, nerfed, whatever. It's in a better place right now. Tracer does better damage at medium short range than she did in basically the original game, and Genji was a little better at softening people up, making things weak, creating openings for the dive to happen. He was really better at that in terms of the damage pressure, not in terms of the positioning, but in terms of the damage pressure than OG Tracer was. Tracer's gotten better at that, and that also doesn't help Genji. But okay, we had those three things effectively, those three traits: this second dive option, powerful ult, and sort of meh poke to help soften people up, create openings for the dive there. So now let's look at comps sort of from the more modern era. And chat, I'm not ignoring you. I will get to you guys in a minute. I'm just going to sort of go through my presentation here first, and then I'll answer stuff. If you guys want to jump up to the top and chat, you guys know the drill. Super chats exist, and I will interrupt myself to deal with those. So then we have sort of the modern era of comps, what we've seen within the last year or so in terms of comps. This is not a perfect recognition of every single comp that has ever been played. I did not put every single variation of a comp that has seen success. For example, I put Brawl here, and this is a good representation of what Brawl has looked like, but it doesn't include every single variant. We've seen Torbs mixed in here. We've seen Briggs in place of Lucio. But this is sort of the main stuff, the standard. Similar thing with all of these, especially in the DPS slots. You're going to see some flexibility. Maybe I haven't listed every single hero that's been viable, but overall, these are going to be pretty good representations of what the modern comps have looked like. We know what Brawl has looked like. Genji's just not going to fit into Brawl. I don't think we have any real questions there, right? Genji's not going to fit into a Brawl comp. That makes sense. Genji is at his heart a dive hero with a little bit of lean towards poke, a dive hero with some poke to him, with some good ult power, not going to make sense in Brawl. Okay, well, is he going to make sense in Six-Man? Six-Man looks like a dive comp. It's using some of his old friends, Monkey, Tracer, it's using another diver, it's using Lucio. Like, this looks like something that he could fit into. But here's the problem. We look at Six-Man and we go, well, Six-Man or Talon Dive, whatever you want to call it, or Monkey Rush, you can call it anything by these names, is going to be a comp that is less about softening stuff up and then going in, which is something that we said Genji was potentially good at. Hey, take your angle, soften them up. You're actually okay in the poke phase because you have deflect, you have those shurikens. If the poke phase goes on, you're building your ult. That's going to be something that six man is less interested in because six man really just wants to pull the trigger and go. It wants to rotate at short sight lines. It pretty regularly doesn't take a bunch of angle control because Moira isn't good at healing people as they spread out to take angle control. It's actually a brawl comp masquerading as a dive comp, to be perfectly honest. It's going, hey, we want more mobility than the brawl comp has, and in exchange we'll be a little weaker than the brawl comp as a brawl, but what we're really doing is trying to brawl with anyone that isn't a brawl comp, and when we run into a brawl comp, we'll swap. That's really what's going on here. Like we saw six man sort of gets played or got played because we were seeing some double bubble, some monkey dive type stuff that was potentially going, hey, we're going to monkey dive, we're going to do these slow fights to build ult charges and then win with ult charges against brawl comps, against other comps, and six man just went, no, we're not going to let you have these fights. I mean, six man existed before this did, but we're not going to let you have these fights. We're going to be able to rush the fight much more quickly than that and bring the brawl to you, etc. So we look at that and we sort of go, okay, Genji doesn't really fit in that. Six man wants to go faster than that. He can't really take Sombra's spot because, well, Sombra goes and does some of your scouting that maybe in the past Genji would have been poking during that phase, would have had deflect, so would have sort of had an invincibility cooldown of sorts to check with, etc., similar to a DM checking with D.Va. Maybe that would have made sense. Not really. Sombra's just better at it. Like when we get to, hey, we need the dive to just happen reliably and happen fast and we don't have time to set up angles, well, the person who can go set up invisibly is just better for staging. The amazing amount of power that you bring to a dive, the amazing amount of strength that you bring to a dive by having scouting from invisibility, by being able to set up on an angle, even if none of the rest of your team is invisible right next to the enemies, and then still bringing that super powerful ult without having to drag an Ana along with you to bring that ult, so giving yourself more comp flexibility. Well, it seems like in this situation, Sombra's just the better diver. And unfortunately, as we move on to something like Monkey Dive here, this one again gets a little more, it tends to play a little slower in the modern era. Monkey Dive, it likes to go, hey, if we're bringing a monkey, we're bringing an Ana. If we're bringing an Ana, especially if we're bringing the double bubble variant of this, we might be bringing this Zarya, and then we're playing multiple soft dives to charge up energy, to charge up nano, to charge up primal, to let our DPS take angles, and then we'll go hard, etc. Well, that could work okay for Genji from a standpoint of, oh, he potentially gets time to charge up Blade. But again, if you have to pick between, hey, invisibility, for example, or, hey, if we're going to bring this Zarya anyway, let's bring Hanzo, who has much better poke than Genji does, while having an ult that should be strictly worse than Genji's, but combos with Zarya's, well, that's going to be an easy choice. Let's get the much better poke. Okay, well, we could also bring, well, what else could we do? What if we want a harder dive? What if we want a harder dive than Hanzo brings? Well, that's what Echo's for. Echo is similar in that equation to Genji, where Echo goes, hey, I am a poke dive hybrid, similar to how Genji was a dive poke hybrid, but while Genji was a dive poke hybrid that leaned significantly more into his dive, Echo is a dive poke hybrid that leaves significantly more into her poke, but overall is just stronger. Like the total value that Echo brings is simply stronger than the total value that Genji brings. Like that's just reality, unfortunately. So that's going to be a problem for Genji. Echo is going to be one of the big problems for why Genji can't be meta, because her raw stats effectively, her raw value is higher while fulfilling a very similar role there. And as you guys have probably seen here, we can also run into the second big issue. Zen Ball Dive is probably closer, actually, to the traditional dive that we saw down here, OG Dive, than this one is. This one plays really slow. This one plays, with this Ana Brig backline, or it plays with a Mercy plus Echo or Mercy plus Pharah. It's playing pretty slow, which isn't to say that this never played with a Pharah, but so be it. But this is probably closer to it, where this can play for poke, this can play to hit pretty fast dives. In fact, it can play perfectly happily like this with this comp right here and go, hey, we're good to go, we're going to do this, as could this other comp, though it would still go slow if it did that, and go, we're going to we're going to go ahead and look to, before people have had a chance to charge ults, before people have been able to do much work, we're going to stage, we're going to dive. Great, we have invisibility for staging. And again, the raw power that invisibility plus being able to, so perfect scouting basically, and being able to position almost anywhere gets you, even though yes, Sombra's burst is worse than Genji's, the raw power that that brings to your neutral fight, that perfect scouting, is just too good to pass up. Sombra is the better secondary diver because of the raw neutral power you get from that scouting information and what you get from the what you get in terms of that scouting information, as well as her being able to always, almost no matter what, have a different angle than your team, with very little having to be done in terms of earning that angle. So we've identified two main problems for Genji here, and Crunch basically said them to start in chat. I think it was Crunch anyway. Yeah, what we've run into is these two stole his job. These two stole his job, and they came into existence mostly after this meta. Sombra came into existence during this meta. There was a window where you'd actually play a comp like this. Sombra would hack health packs. This flex support would play her. It was great. I loved it. But we've run into that. So then we go, okay, well, can Genji get in there another way? Could it be, okay, could he get enough ult power to be better than Sombra in that slot? Could he get enough neutral power to be better than Sombra in that slot? Could he get his poke buffed to not necessarily be like better poke than Echo, but to have the total value of his poke plus dive greater than the total value of Echo's poke plus dive? Could that happen? Or does he need to challenge for Tracer's slot? Because that's the other thing. We've looked at this and we've said, hey, these two are problems for him. But the third problem for him is that Tracer just permanently lives in any meta where you might think, oh, hey, a flanker would be nice. Tracer just lives in this first dive slot. And he can't really do anything about it. The only time that hasn't been true was when we just totally went overpowered with ult power here, and maybe we could go there again. So he either would need to go, hey, based on historical context, he would either need more ult power. Oh, that's not what I want to do. He would either need more ult power. That's not the way to spell that. More ult power. Sure. He would need potentially a harder dive, but he would need like a harder dive than Tracer. He would need to be better in the neutral than. So when I say harder dive, I don't necessarily just mean more damage, though that could help. I really just mean he would need. We could even call it that. We could even go, hey, ult plus. Or we could go significant neutral upgrade. We're not talking a little bit of. We're not talking a little bit of, oh, he does a little bit more shuriken damage. We're talking he can rival Tracer, or we're talking he brings something to the table that is worth Sombra's basically perfect scouting being able to set up anywhere. Or significant poke upgrade. Like, and again, this is in neutral, but we could go something, like we can look at this where it's like Dragon Blade, upgraded. We could look at this as poke, significantly upgraded. We could look at this as special neutral, like perfect scouting. Moderately upgraded something. Like we would have to look at something in this realm for Genji to have a meta. Or anything that makes sense to him. And those aren't going to happen, would be my guess. And we can get into why. If we look at those things, part of the issue is it would be a significant character redesign, which, hey, Overwatch 2, so maybe. The other thing that you potentially run into there is people don't like it. We know that people really don't like it when Genji is powerful. We know part of what got Dive nerfed into the ground in the first place originally, what got Brig released, what got Moira then Brig released. Some of that stuff was people really didn't like Genjis, and more people didn't like Genjis than didn't like Tracers. And we've talked about that before on this channel, where for new players, for inexperienced players who don't have control of their mouse, it is important to, it is harder to sort of do these diagonal up flips or these up flicks of their mouse than it is to do the left and right flicks onto a Tracer, even though Tracer's movement is way better. So we do have a super chat coming in from Adam Nicholas saying, "Hey coach, heard Legit RC one rounded you in MMA, so you retired, and afterwards he played Overwatch for a week and outcoached you and swept you. Pretty sad." Super chat from Adam Nicholas for $4.99. Thank you, Adam. Thank you. It's funny. I must have been hit really hard because I don't remember that happening in MMA. I don't remember many people being able to challenge me in MMA effectively, actually. I'm not claiming I won every single bout, absolutely not, but I think I've gone over that before, and it was, closer to a 90% win rate than an 80. That's for sure. Anyway, so continuing through this, we were at this. Genji would need one of those significant upgrades. So where has Genji seen power? The only other place that Genji has really seen power or seen any sort of use is actually over here. And if we go over here in this poke comp, this is the one comp that we haven't covered yet, Genji in this world of hybrids that we're occasionally in, has very occasionally effectively taken Doomfist's spots and been like, no, I can do what Doomfist is doing. We're playing a poke comp, but we're gonna hit Holt Doomfist slams. Okay, double shield with some Holt Doomfist slams, I like it. Or double shield with some Doomfist punches, I like it. And Genji has been like, no, I can do that. I can dash through stuff. That's really cool. And I can also, in case we run into poke on the other team, I'm a flanker, and I can go contest, a lone widow, a lone ash. I can go contest them, and that's good. So we're upgraded. We have a little bit of a dive element in our poke. That's kind of been it for him. That's what he's been relegated to in terms of organized professional play. I'm not saying no one has ever tried to run him in like a double bubble comp type comp, but really, this is the only place. This is pretty situational. It is not an automatic in poke comps and bunker comps and double shield comps that you're going to run a element that looks like, let me actually even get that, an element that looks like this or this. And even if you were to run an element that looks like one of these things, to be like, hey, we're potentially going to get in there from a different angle on Holtz and be like, hey, good damage. Maybe we go in there with a pulse bomb. Maybe we dash through it. Maybe we slam into it. Maybe we just shoot it from behind, whatever. As well as, hey, we can sweep. We can make sure that your pokers, if you're playing poke versus us, so we're in a poke v poke, we have the advantage because if we're playing one of these three, we can go contest your angles, go contest those lone pokers and make them retreat back to core, etc. And yeah, that is good. That's a valid thing to do, but it's by no means automatic that poke comps are going to include one of these elements, and there's no real reason that Genji is better than these other heroes. Yes, Doomfist is going to be less good. He's not really going to go contest a poker the way that these three would, but let's be honest, this Sombra's probably going to be better at it than Genji. Sombra's also going to bring the better ult if it comes to it. Sombra's also going to let you cheat hardcore in terms of timing your own peaks, telling people when to peak, etc. And Tracer is going to be better at shooing people off if it gets more scrappy, etc. So when people are picking the Genji, they're really doing it because they want to play Genji, because they're particularly proud of their Genji. They think they have a good Genji. It's not because he's some great pick for this or the right pick for this. He's not a bad pick for it. He's fine, but it's not some amazing thing that we're looking at there. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into here. We can talk about, again, like I said, why he wasn't allowed to be meta, and that was really he wasn't allowed to be powerful enough in the neutral, and we've made newer heroes more powerful since. Like, heroes that have been added to the game since him that do more things, because we have had a general power creep, have replaced him, and he was an early target for hate on, say, the Blizzard forums, on, oh, hey, he's too hard to hit, he's more frustrating to new players than even a hero that comes out of invisibility is, which is mind-boggling, but is something that happened. People really don't like Genji's movement when they're new players, and deflect doesn't feel good either, which isn't too surprising. So that's really what I wanted to cover here. If people have, but to go back to the original question, is Hanzo more meta? Well, Hanzo's more meta because obviously Hanzo fits in poke comps. He's by no means a must play. Obviously, he fits in Zen Ball comps, though by no means a must play. He can fit, in a similar spot to where an Echo would fit, in a similar spot to where a Pharah would fit. If flyers don't make sense because, say, the opponent has gone double hit scan, but you don't want to go double diver against them, you want to keep your flexibility. Something like him could make sense, or something like Ash to go with your Tracer can make sense. And then we've, of course, there are some of these monkey dive comps, be they double bubble or monkey diva variants, where, hey, yes, you can include a Hanzo in that, especially if it's double bubble for the combo power there, on top of being a relevant poke aspect. So now I am going to catch up on chat, but if people have questions, you can throw them up there in chat. If you guys are enjoying the content, again, please do drop a like, subscribe, you know the drill. And Crunch, very first comment, literally before I'd even gone live with the video, was Genji meta requires Echo and Tracer to not be superior Genjis, so buffing him to meet them maybe. Not exactly where we went. I identified a third hero that I say is relevant for that. I don't think, could be wrong, but I don't think we're going to get rid of Tracer in that first dive slot. I just don't think that that's really likely to happen. So you'd really have to, again, buff him up to the level where it makes sense to pick Genji instead of Echo from a poke dive standpoint, or instead of Tracer, or instead of, Sombra from a neutral dive standpoint, from a like, hey, we want to go hard dive, double divers, etc. And honestly, double divers isn't as frequently common. It's a little, it's not quite as flexible as we like. There's a reason that we now more frequently play hybrid comps like poke dive, like poke brawl, like dive brawl, etc. Semitic raises his hand or waves because Genji isn't a DLC hero. Rip. Kinda. There was also that single patch where they super buffed his right click and then he was meta and then they nerfed him and he disappeared again. Yeah, I don't even know if that would have stuck, to be honest, in terms of him being meta there. But yes, what we're looking at there is if you can make him strong enough in neutral, if you can make his poke good enough that it competes with Echo's, or that his total value competes with Echo, that works. But right now, Echo is just better for playing a hybrid, and Sombra is just better as a secondary diver because she makes the whole dive so much better. Plus says, I'd hate it if there was a Genji meta. Why? Lark, I agree Nanoblade is one of the most annoying win conditions in the game. Is Genji hampered by having his good ult power often needing something to go with it, or is that just how it is and not really an issue for Genji? I mean, he's hampered by it, don't get me wrong, it hurts him. You can't even think about, you wouldn't put Genji in this comp regardless. You wouldn't, because this comp is a little too one-dimensional in how it needs to fight. But maybe you could make an argument for Genji in this comp. Maybe, but not really. If he could Nanoblade without an Ana, because it would be like, oh, hey, he's got, he doesn't have as good a neutral necessarily as Sombra, but he's got like, he's got a better poke than, he doesn't have as good a dive necessarily in terms of let me rephrase that. He doesn't have as good a scouting power, but the actual damage he does in the dive is a little better. The damage he does in the poke is a little bit better. And now his ult is on par with her. Okay, maybe there's an argument for him to be in play if you were to do that. If you were to make Blade just automatically Nanoblade level powerful, maybe there would be a place to sort of thread the needle and get him in there. But no, I don't really think that's going to happen, for starters. Yeah, I don't really think that that's going to happen. So is Genji hampered by having his good ult power often needing something to go with it? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Doesn't really bother me, Genji being meta, because it probably means Ana is meta too. Yeah, Ana metas are fun. It's kind of one of those heroes like Doomfist, where if he's meta at the high level, it means he feels completely oppressive in lower tier games with less comps and stuff. I don't know about that. I think that was true when everyone was new to Overwatch. I don't know how true that would be anymore, even though we had one where he was for like a week, because I think people are a little bit better at Overwatch, and people being a little bit better at Overwatch should mean that some of this diagonal up aiming, there shouldn't be a ton of new players that like can't follow Genji's when he's bouncing. Like, of course they're not going to follow him perfectly, but they weren't following the bouncing Tracer perfectly either. So, like, I wonder if it would be less frustrating to people now than it was on release. I wonder. I also wonder if the Genji eliminating you is more frustrating in Blade or Nano Blade than you getting eliminated by the EMP, because it's not always Sombra that eliminates you when she EMPs you. So it feels like, oh well, this person didn't really get me, Sombra got me. But Sombra doesn't really get the credit for getting me because this person is going to get it in the feed. I wonder if there's some of that from a psychological standpoint going on. You'd care a lot less if they removed deflect. Um, just because it's been too buggy, because it's had its hitbox change size. Why blah? Being able to skip the whole baiting cooldown thing with Sombra and just saying, lol, no, you don't have it, might give her a slight edge, and there is still an argument for EMP greater than Nanoblade. She doesn't completely get to skip the whole forced cooldowns thing, because she will get forced out if she just goes fishing for hack cooldowns. She can sometimes do it as an alternate win condition, but if you're like, we're not going to dive until we get a hack off in the modern era, it's just not going to happen at high levels. She's just going to get forced out if you need a hack before you'll dive. But yeah, she can. But her ability to skip the forcing cooldown stage, or skip having to, I'd say her ability to skip the scouting phase by just doing it for her team, and then her personally, so skipping her team scouting phase, and then her personally getting to skip the staging phase, not having to worry about fighting for space, then finding health packs to heal up, and then being able to hold the space, and then being able to dive, because you can't hold staged space forever. Opponents come and shoo you out, or you spend HP to go get that space, you spend resources to get that space, and she really doesn't have to. So her skipping the team scouting phase by doing it for them, and skipping her own staging phase is pretty powerful. Yeah, right. 2020, his damage was buffed for a couple weeks. Right, and that's an example of significantly upgrading his poke, so oh wait, he can potentially compete with Echo now. It also buffs his dive power because it gets his right clicks more damage in terms of when he's in there, but hey. I think it was the May Melee. It was an anniversary last year. The only thing that felt talks about Genji was when he got the big buff with his ult charge rate. What's Genji's double? What if Genji's double jump gave him a horizontal speed boost like Hanzo's lunge? Um, a horizontal speed boost? I mean, oh, so like take away double jump and instead just have it move him left or right when he does it? Yeah, I think people would be bothered by that way less. If you just replace double jump with lunge, people would be bothered way less. Thank you. Thank you guys for making fun of my brain starting to write. uh, he was meta early season 23, right? Yeah, that was the very temporary buff. Buffed his right click damage and reduced the spread. Yeah, it was a big deal. Glad to see it was etched into everyone's heart. I mean, it was so unusual. That's what made it newsworthy, right? Like, Genji meta for a week? It made Zen feel completely unplayable. Why? Like, yes, he hurts, but so does Tracer. Tracer Sombra, if I'm Zen, like, Tracer Sombra is a lot more scary for just showing up and deleting me than a Genji that sort of has to earn his way in. If Genji's getting there, getting to you as Zen without being pre-discorded, without being pre-shot at, without having his deflect forced before he gets there, that's the problem. It made everything unplayable. I hated that week. I think that buff went wrong because it was anti-skill in terms of making his right clicks bigger. I wasn't playing during that week, but he wrecked just about the entire tank line. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Hit less shots and easier shots by just spamming right click. Yeah. So it obviously would be better to potentially move power to his left click rather than his right click if you're trying to upgrade his poke power, because you actually don't want him stronger in the dive itself. That's the opposite of what you want. It also potentially makes more sense to go, hey, could we be playing with something like deflect to buff his scouting power, to buff his poke phase through deflect, something along those lines. I know Blah would hate that. Winston was helpless against him. Yeah, well, Winston has his own problem where Winston, like, Winston, I swear sees play. Not I swear sees play, but Winston, some of Winston seeing play has to do with Anna, can you drag Winston into meta? Or is the map geometry annoying enough that we don't feel like playing ball? Like, this is the better dive comp right now. It is. It is. This is easier to play on some maps, but this is probably just the stronger dive comp right now. Zen sort of, speaking of stealing jobs, Hammond sort of stole Winston's job, and that Hammond has a meaningful poke phase, unlike Winston. That's always been a Winston weakness, which makes Hammond way better at. Hammond is better at dueling for lane control. Hammond is better in the poke phase itself. Hammond is better against poke and at enabling poke than Winston is, whereas Winston is good in dive, and Winston can work while pretending to be Brawl, but, and he's got that deep cleave with that Tesla, but Hammond's pile drive is pretty darn solid while fighting Brawl too, so, like, again, we kind of just got skill creeped past. Poor Winston. And they've tried. They've nerfed Ball in terms of the grappling, in terms of how much the adaptive shield. They've nerfed Balls a couple things. They've buffed Winston's armor, but, like, there is a design flaw there where this hero is too much more flexible, but this hero goes vertical a little easier in some maps. Like, it's easier to get around on Gibraltar on Winston than Ball, for example. It's not fair. Oh well. Think it went wrong because they didn't pull back ult charge enough? Yeah, that could very much be it. I do think it's stupid you pretty much never use left click as Genji. It's just so bad compared to spamming right click unless you're way out of range. Temporal flex, yeah. Adam Nicholas says, yeah, I'm pretty sure legit RC made you retire twice. Well, I don't think so. I really want to see Temporal MMA video. Just show us the ones you won so Adam won't say anything. I mean, probably not going to do that, but okay. You think that would make Adam stop? Exactly. Temporal making an MMA video with Adam as his sparring partner. If Adam ever stopped, I'd feel we'd lost part of chat. Adam is the evolution of Jumbo. Okay. Adam is our top 500 troll. He really is. The TLDR of this is basically, again, she got power creeped out of the game. Right, I think it's important to point at specifically who, though. Like, for Genji to see play, either something really weird would have to happen, or he'd need to be able to take one of these three people's jobs. Primary diver, secondary diver, poke dive hybrid. He'd need to be able to do one of these things better than one of these people. Or secondary diver with ult power. Primary diver, secondary diver with ult power. Or you need something wild where you need incredible amounts of ult power again, which we've moved away from him on with the most recent patch to him. But, like, people are holding out hope, like, oh, are we going to get a Genji meta again? These three heroes are your benchmark for can we get a Genji meta. So I'm getting that we can report anyone picking Genji for throwing. I mean, kind of. Temporal, can we do 6v1 temporal fight and see how many rounds we lose? In, like, actual physical combat? It is so much harder with each person that you add in physical combat. Like, 1v1, sure, whatever. 1v2 feels like 1v4. Like, that's just how it works. Like, each person that you add makes it so much harder. Now, the solution to this is alpha strikes from the solo person, where you go, hey, it's an alpha strike. You're actually up against, say, 4 people. You recognize that you're going to be up against 4 people, and before it gets serious, you go for, I don't want to say lethal, but fight-ending blows, broken noses, elbows to the face, knees to the groin, knees to the face, etc., things like that to open the fight, and you immediately reduce the count of this to 2, so it becomes a 1v2, which again feels like a 1v4, before the fight even starts. You take the initial blow if you think it's going to come to it, while these people feel secure in their numbers, etc. I'm not telling anyone to go pick fights, but if you think the fight is going to happen, that is usually the tactic that you go with. You can do more tactics like this. You can, of course, bring it into slightly more narrow spaces. You can avoid grappling and tying up with opponents when you're up against multiple opponents. But if they know what they're doing, they're going to do things like try to tie up with you, try to take it to the ground where they can grapple with you, etc. As you just can't compete against multiple opponents once you're tied up, once you're on the ground, anything like that. You can also do things like if again there's no weapons, no projectiles involved, you can go okay, let's test your endurance, and you can do the hey let's start running away and see what speed you guys chase at, because my guess is you guys jog at different speeds. Okay, and then let's handle you. Like, there's lots of ways to do this. But again, I'm not telling anyone to pick fights. I'm not telling anyone to knee anyone in the face or anything like that. But 1v6ing, where I didn't want to hurt anyone, would be very challenging. Um, if none of you had any training, sure, that's different. And most of you don't have training, or at least not what I'd recognize as training. But it is very, very hard. Like, it is very hard to take on multiple opponents if everyone is prepared for the fight and actually serious and ready to fight, etc. Is legit RC a top one Genji main? Only if people are reporting him for throwing. Just scream, oh, look, it's legit RC. Temporal would cower in fear. Okay, okay. Why would we lose unless it's the scarf? Unless the scarf tags in? Ah. Remember on release when people said Genji was a Bastion counter because people were incapable of not holding deflect and left click? Good times. I mean, he was, and beyond bronze. Like, Genji is one of the better answers, or was for this era of the game, one of the better answers for Bastion. Getting angles around Bastion, having deflect around Bastion, shoving deflect in Bastion's face when the dive comes in so that he can't do things. Being able to stack deflect plus defense matrix, the whole comp falls apart because early game most people were doing protect the Bastion, protect the President style comps. If the scarf tags in, that'd be cheating. Okay. Joshua asks, do you think the nerfs to shields have hurt him? Back in the day, Winston and Genji had lots of damage that went through shields and defense matrix, but now Echo can just blow up the shields. Do you think the nerf to shields has hurt him? Back in the day, Winston and Genji had lots of damage that went through shields and defense matrix. I actually think the higher sustain that we approach, sustain in this game kind of went like this. And it's weaker than it was, don't get me wrong, but sustain in this game is still higher than it was when your support options were Lucio, Mercy, Symmetra, and Zen. Even though we have less shielding than we did and we brought down some of the healing numbers, lower sustain did favor a Genji who could, yes, do 50 unmitigated damage with a dash, a Winston who could Tesla through things, etc. So I think the level of sustain that we have in this game, and maybe it should be a little lower than this, maybe it should be here because barriers are weaker than they were when they started the game, but like, well, in some cases, not in all, actually. Winston's had a meaningful buff. But anyway, I would say that, yeah, there's probably something to that, Joshua. Adam says, in all seriousness, Genji is too oppressive due to his kit being based on mobility, so they need to keep the skill ceiling very high. I mean, and then he goes on to insulting me and complimenting legit RC, which is fine, Genji is too oppressive due to his skill based on mobility. Right, but Tracer has the same thing. I mean, Tracer's skill ceiling is high, and I'd say Tracer's skill ceiling is very high with her mobility. Genji's skill ceiling might not be as high with his mobility, but his payoff for that mobility caps out much, much lower than Tracer's as well. So I'm not convinced I see the issue there. But I get you're targeting a specific section of the ladder, most of it, and I understand where you're going. Uh... Genji is worse Tracer for brawling? Yes. Yes. Unless we're talking about Super Genji with the bajillion damage, right-click shurikens, and zero spread. Not zero spread, but reduced spread. Genji is about 50 times easier for me to deal with than Tracer. I low-key fear being dove by Tracer no matter the rank, never afraid of Genji. That makes sense. The Tracers aren't very good below about Masters either, to be perfectly honest. Oh, and Blah talking about deflect. It's buggy and annoying, and he can cancel it whenever into a dash plus other damage. Yeah, yeah. Far easier time with Tracer. So Tracer feels better. You understand Tracer better. You understand Tracer's movement better. Like, I get it, Blah, but that's a you thing. Like, that is a you thing. It's annoying that he has deflect, but it's annoying that Tracer recovers her health when she uses recall. Like, it really is the movement and how you have to track the Genji sort of making you turn your head like that, and players don't like that versus Tracer's blink. Well, a good Tracer is blinking through you, blinking past you, etc., and making you do a lot with your head as well, but it doesn't feel quite as bad as this. Are you up there? Are you up there? Are you up there? Like, I do really get that feels bad. Um but it's not actually a defense as people's aim and mouse control game sense goes up, whereas Tracers is a better defense of, like, no, you actually moved more seriously from their crosshair. But I get it. It's annoying, and you're kind of highlighting the problem. Genji is easier to track and sleep and to predict his abilities as a nano player. Blah says his brother Hanzo needs a nerf too. I mean, he should have a role. Not I can sniper, tank bust, I'm mobile. Yeah. Yeah. Sniper, tank buster. Sniper plus close range tank buster isn't really a good role combination. And he never should have been given the little poof jump mobility lunge. That was just stupid. Like, lunge should have never been added to his kit in the rework. Semitic says EMP is one of the most annoying ults. I don't know how more people don't complain about it. It either takes super passive positioning and lose out on value, or potentially go for gamer recreation plays. So the thing about Semitic is most Sombras aren't getting it very often, and most Sombras, like, people might complain about EMP, but people feel like she's weak outside of the EMP. And on ladder, that's mostly true. In organized play, where you're actually scouting for your team and you're actually going to have organized dives that she's staging for and she's getting her benefits to herself and to the team, that's less true. And she's quite good. But on ladder, she's sort of held back by the, like, okay, your EMP is powerful, but you're only like 3/4 of a hero outside of your EMP. Tracer is so hard to hit, so obnoxious. Once you get those ticks going, nade is useless unless you get recall out. Wait for blinks to sleep. My health pool disagrees. I hear you, Adam. I do. I do. Wait for blinks for sleep is true, but you might have to self nade. You hope to get her when you self nade. You self nade in the direction that she's in, but you are probably going to have to self nade before you can, be sure that you've gotten 3 blinks out of her, 2 blinks and recall, something like that. Genji is easy. Strafe, shoot, wait for dash, instant the floor, and hit him while he's predictably moving due to the jumps. I mean, there's something to it, yeah. Wait for deflect, pop sleep when he's falling from a jump in a predictable arc. Genji feels good to shut down. Their sleeps are fun, so are the nades. Tracer just feels like, hey, I exist. You can't you can't hit me, have fun. I mean, you can exhaust Tracer. You can exhaust Tracer, and Tracer isn't going to play in the high damage range against you for the most part, whereas Genji is trying to play right in your face, around your head, orbiting you, and is doing high damage to you. Much more predictable, but is in range to do good damage to you, whereas Tracer is playing a little more medium short range. Maybe Winston will compete better when he gets his long range shots. Maybe. What if for no reason Blizzard just crippled Sombra and Echo? Does Genji get it to enjoy the limelight? Could be. You could see that happen. But it has to be, does it make sense to play dive or some variant of dive or poke dive or something? Probably has to be dive, because unless you make Genji's poke better, does it make sense to play some variant of dive if Echo and Sombra have both been nerfed? Or is it too weak? Well, that's going to depend on what the tanks and the supports and the non-dive DPS look like, right? Like, if Reinhardt and Bap are really strong, the answer is probably no. If Ball and Anna are really strong, or maybe Winston and Anna, or maybe Ball and maybe Winston Anna, whatever. Maybe Winston Anna Tracer, whatever. If those are all strong, yeah, it might make sense to go no, keep playing dive. Like there is more to the meta than just these three heroes because we're talking like for him to be meta, he needs to be able to take the slot of one or two of these three heroes, but it also needs to be a situation where Brawl isn't just king at the time. Poke isn't just dominantly powerful at the time. It doesn't strictly need to be. There's places he can fit into the other stuff, like the little poke aspect asterisks that we talked about. But yeah. Elork says, as Zen, I generally feel like Genji is harder to fight than Tracer. You can make Tracer use her recoil very quickly as Zen, but Genji's a little sturdier and Deflect is more annoying than Blinks in my opinion. Hold on. Elork, Blinks, three of them, probably four of them by time you get through them, are less annoying than Deflect. Once Deflect is over or canceled, it's over. It's done. This, like, I think if you zoom out, you're probably gonna realize that doesn't make sense. Like each individual blink may feel less annoying than deflect, but the ability blink, the three or four of them that you'll get over the course of a fight, versus deflect, which you know is once it's gone, it's on cooldown. Like no, like yes, you have to play around the existence of this, just like you have to play around the existence of recall, the existence of blinks, but like deflect on a scale, if I have to weigh these things, this is my scale. Like my scale is like, nope, these are way heavier. These are way better. Temporal, that does not sound fun. So why doesn't Temporal want to show us MMA video? I mean, like some of it would be hard to track down. I have some wrestling stuff. I have less MMA recorded stuff. Obviously, wrestling is related, but not the same thing to MMA. I just recorded less of the MMA stuff. There is probably some stuff I could track down, but yeah, probably not. uh, Valve vs. Temporal 1v1. Does watching street fights on World Star and thinking I could do better than that count as training? Probably not, Ellark. Probably not. I nag about Hanzo, but the real character within the DPS cast that has gotten away the longest with being overtuned is Tracer. Yeah, I think she sort of hid from existence by being like, I wasn't meta during goats, and it's like, yeah, and she's not like 100% locked in meta. There are absolutely poke comps where you're like, yeah, we're not running a Tracer. There's absolutely brawl comps where like, yeah, we're not running a Tracer. But if you're gonna hybridize a comp, throwing a Tracer into a brawl comp, into a poke comp, sounds like a pretty good idea. And if you're running a dive comp, any form of dive comp, a dive poke comp, a dive brawl comp, whatever, your Tracer is there. Semitic finds Tracer much more annoying. Is Tracer actually overtuned, or is Blink just something that doesn't have anyone else that fills its role quite the same as a flanker? Tracer's ability to sustain in the back line. So, who could sustain to a similar level in the back line? And the answer is really no one. Like, it sort of becomes a could you sustain someone in the back line? And Sombra's probably the next closest thing. Sombra and Diva are probably your next closest thing for things that can sustain on pretty deep angles against the opponents. We're talking greater than 90-degree angles. Like, you could potentially be like, your team is here, your Hanzo is over here and the other team is here, depending on the comp. But like anything that's going to go at a greater degree than this Hanzo, like a Diva over here, a Sombra back here, a Tracer in here, these are sort of like the only ones, or not the only ones, but those are sort of the ones who I guess would be the next competitors without looking at the hero cast, which I guess I'm doing. Let me look at the hero cast real quick right here. Hero cast, DPS, Genji would like to be in that. He's not. Yeah, none of the rest of these can really sustain behind the enemy team. Except for your Moira that dove deep, you know. That said, Blink is really powerful. We have other things like it now, but the concept of this is an ability that takes one ability slot on a character, because most characters have two, maybe three ability slots. This takes one ability slot on a character, and it's actually three separate moves that recharge pretty fast. At the original game release was really powerful. Remember, original game release, your only equivalents to that might have been like barriers, where barriers have health that you can put up a Rhine shield and then take it back down. Okay. Other things didn't really have charges. There was no double Junkrat mine. There was no Diva can toggle her DM on and off. DM was all or nothing. There was no what would another example be where you charge up multiple of something? Well, experimental Overwatch 2 double Zarya bubble where you can use them either way. Like everything was a lot more all or nothing, and Tracer just sort of broke that paradigm with her cooldown that wasn't a cooldown. So instead of having two abilities, she really had like 4, 5, depending on how you want to think about it. I mean, even in all games, it's somewhat common for Zens to eliminate Tracers that come to 1v1 him. Obviously, they lose more than they win, but still. It happens, sure. It happens. They do lose more than they win. And sometimes they lose even when they have a Mercy damage boosting them and then flicking to heals when they start taking damage. Sometimes they even lose when the Tracer, got shot and had to get a health pack again on the way in and they were aware of it. Like it's a dicey one. But yes, you pour your heart and soul into doing them. I identify as Tracer and I'm offended. Temporal is reading so poorly right now. Ouch, ouch. Tracer's just awful. Get a big friend, Adam Nicholas. Hee hee. Please no Brig. Oh, get a Brig friend. Yes, I am reading poorly, apparently. Maybe it just feels better because the shots are freaky because you moved vertically. I'd agree with that. Blinks are less annoying than deflect. An individual blink should be less annoying than deflect. The concept of, hey, them moving with a blink might be less annoying than deflect, but like the total value of the thing that is blinks versus deflect, it's not even close. Temporal really did a you what mate when comparing three blinks versus one deflect? Yes, I did. It's a fixed distance. I can't eliminate myself with tracer blinking. I mean, you can back off the edge while running from a blinking tracer, but I understand. I assume at the highest level, people have better trigger discipline against deflect. Yes. I mean, there's a greater understanding of, okay, you have deflect. Deflect is annoying, but we can force your deflect out pretty quickly, and we're not going to use big abilities on you until you use deflect. Or we use abilities perhaps like micro missile, and you'll deflect, and then we turn our micro missile away so it's not a problem. But we're not nading or sleeping or throwing a 5 orb at you when we don't know your deflect status. That's just not something that we do. Just like we don't grab when Diva's sitting right there. We instead go individual Anashot, individual Zen Orb. We got our Discord Orb on you, that sort of thing. They nerfed Tracer, but she pressed recall and undid it. That's basically what happened. Tracer and Sombra, pretty much it. Helix. It's the problem with Tracer. She doesn't go away. Genji goes away. Tracer will always come back. Genji's going to come back too. Would you be opposed to Overwatch 2 adding another Tracer-esque survivable in the backline type hero? Yes. Adam says yes. Um, Someone who can stay in the backline can sustain in the backline as long as Tracer and as well as Tracer. I need to know exactly what that looks like. I would, but probably. Like, it would change the game pretty heavily. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it, but it would change the game pretty heavily. Because if you have, like, a second real sustain in your backline type hero, like the battle is on all sides at all time at that point, or it's even more about the battle for lane control to not let them get there in the first place, which I guess I'm okay with. I'm okay with the game being more about the battle for lane control to stop them from getting there in the first place. Yeah, there's ways that that could work. Mm-hmm. Also, can we rename Six Man to G Man Comp, because that's all I see when I look at it? G Man could be, could be. I could have wrote Talon Dive here. I could have wrote Monkey Rush. Instead, I just did a bad six. If you guys look at my old Overwatch composition videos, like this handwriting is pretty good compared to some of those. Sorry, computer handwriting with a mouse is hard. The only other hero that can sustain in the backline is Nolan's Moira. Yep, Moira. What would be the difference between the new Tracer and new hero and Tracer? Or we end up with Hammond. That was the hero we missed that can sustain in the backline. Yes, Hammond is actually the next best hero at sustaining in the backline, with as well as Tracer. And you'll notice it's pretty common to see comps these days, because that's a powerful playstyle, to go, let's get a Tracer, let's get a Hammond, and let's get a Zen, and let's just make the enemies live with the fact that it's always going to be heck bad. Uh, Deflect can be used so that you can't fight with him while he gets close enough to dash through you, and once he does that, you basically instant lose. No, you do not instant lose his Zen. If Genji challenges you when you're at full health and uses Deflect to get close to you, and then dashes to go through you, he loses, because you get to start charging partway through his deflect, and then you 180 as soon as he dashes through you, and then you're like, yeah, I'm missing health. And even if you dash through me and immediately double headshot me with a right click, I'm still going to take you out, because you now have no defense against this right click that I got to pre-charge part of during your deflect. That's how it works. Sorry. And his follow-up hits aren't going to be that strong. Like, if Genji opens on you with dash, this is what we teach Genjis not to do. They have to soften you up first. And if you're getting instantly deleted, what's happening is you're not actually getting instantly deleted. You're not respecting that you've been softened up, that you got hit with a couple shurikens, and then he went and made his play. And that's the problem right there. You lost the poke battle. You're the better poke hero, and you let him get poke on you without putting serious poke on him. And he, and I mean damage, not just poking and missing. And then he was able to finish you off in the brawl, which is what he's going to do. He is not, if he is dashing at you, if he's using deflect to close in and then dashing through you, like, aha, I'm Genji, I'm going to use deflect to get close. And then you're here, and then, turn, hit you with 2 out of my 3 for the right click into your head, etc. You've still pre-charged a bit of a right click, throw it into him, then hit the follow-up shot in the Discord, and he's gone. Like, that's how that works. And if he used that dash, you know exactly where he went. If you understand that dash and you can actually instantly 180, he's got nowhere to go. He doesn't have dash, he doesn't have deflect, he's helpless. He's helpless. All he can do is jump. Okay, when you jump, you can't control your movement. He can control a little because he can use a second jump, but that's just delaying the inevitable very, very slightly. Tracer getting too close, risks getting headshot plus the foot. I just told you how to handle Genji. Blink is stronger but less annoying to fight. I can agree with that. I totally agree. It feels worse for a lot of players to fight. I totally understand that concept. Completely get it. If D.Va got forced back into all or nothing DM, how badly would she be affected? Sigma would get run full time instead of her. That big a deal. If D.Va got, okay, you can DM for 4 seconds, but then it's on, an 8-second cooldown after it goes off, or whatever the numbers were to start. Even if it had its original range back, she would get forced out of the meta basically immediately, because it would be giving her her defense matrix at that point would turn into Sigma's shift, and Sigma's shift is not the better of his defensive abilities. Sigma's projected barrier, how he can deploy it and pull it back and deploy it again, even with a little bit of a cooldown, is what lets him compete with D.Va and compete with D.Va's defense matrix of open close, second open close, like that. Like it would be devastating to D.Va. She would need a power trade to still be remotely relevant. Either more micro missile power, a bulkier mech, a smaller, maybe that's the form of more armor, maybe that's the form of a smaller crit box. She would need something in exchange to have a chance of being playable. You're 100% with Elric on that? It's okay. Blink is stronger but less annoying to fight. Yeah, no, I mean, if that's the part you're agreeing with, we're on the same page. Val says, I want to see temporal MMA, so I know how great he is. I'm not trying to find things to mock him. I know, Val. I know. I know that you're not trying to find things to mock me about. And it's not like I'm afraid of being mocked. That's not why I'm not showing MMA. It's just, I legit, like, it would be a challenge to actually go get recordings of my doing MMA. Like I said, I can think of something that I might be able to track down, but that I'd have to track it down type thing. And like track it down does not mean let me dig through, my bookcase, my cabinets and figure out where the recording is or something like that. It would be like, oh wait, I actually would have to track down, does this exist like on the internet because it was on local broadcast television, that sort of thing. Removing off tanks and adding another backline DPS, that would be fine, I'll say it for you. That would be hell. Imagine two Tracers in the back line. So that's it, Temporal. Do you think Tracer will get a rework for Overwatch 2? Like, give her less blinks? I doubt it. I do not expect so, Dream Eater. You've seen my true weakness. I'm afraid of fighting Tracers. I don't trust myself against them. I am the time to go Bap Moira when there's an average Tracer on the other team. Okay, okay. No, you disagree with that, Blast. So you disagree with the last part, the summary that LRC had there of Blinks is stronger but less annoying to fight. He can cancel deflect right away. You don't have the time to charge it up. Right, but if he's using the deflect to close distance, he can't. If he's using the deflect to close distance, he can't charge it up, which was the situation. Charge right click while he's deflecting. I'm dumb. Thanks, coach. Dash plus M2 equals dead Zen. He doesn't even need to melee. No. A single M2 plus dash, he's not going to hit all three shurikens reliably into your head, and a single dash plus two shurikens into your head is not that. He does need to get poke first. Now, you might not be noticing when he gets poke on you. You might be going, oh, that's meaningless chip damage. I'm still at 170. I'm okay, etc. Well, no, that's what he was looking for. Then he can dash out. Right, if he gets you, he can get out. Okay. Okay. Melee, if you miss a shuriken, then he can dash out because it gives him a reset. Right. If he hits you, if he actually gets you down, it's the reset. But if he's taking you down as Zen, you're either he's either getting poke on you before he comes in for the dash, which he absolutely can't do. You might not realize, it's possible that people aren't realizing that what he's doing is he's throwing shurikens and he's dashing behind his own shurikens, and then he's turning and so like, let's say Zen is here, he's here, he throws shurikens, his shurikens are in the air, he dashes past them, and then he 180s and does shurikens again into the head. That's possible. And then if these shurikens hit, yes, your Zen is in trouble. That is possible. But the dash plus shurikens, one round of shurikens in the back of Zen, not going to be enough for you. You could do this, and then if you miss one, still do a melee and get them, but you would need these in play, or you would need to have pre-thrown these and either see that they do damage or throw them knowing that they're going to do damage, and if they don't do damage, you're stuck and Zen should take you. It's very scary because Zen feels like he's starting the fight at like 50 HP, but Genji's empty on abilities, so Zen's actually okay at that point. Tracer's just a lot more scary for him. I'm a lot more confident in dueling Genjis. I'm the exact opposite of him. Love fighting Tracers. Okay, okay. That annoying spray noise of gun puts you in panic noise. With the reduced CC, seemingly in Overwatch 2, Tracer with only 2 blinks seems fair to me. Maybe like a second chunked off of the blink recharge to make up for it. We'll see. That's still a terrible situation. That's how some duels go, though. Like, that's how some duels go, where it looks like, oh no, you're losing. And it's like, no, you're not really losing this duel. If they used all of their cooldowns and they didn't eliminate you and you have a third life, a quarter life, that's just how some of the fights are supposed to work. Like, a huge health differential doesn't necessarily mean that the fight has been driven wrong and the person who fell behind can actually be winning with that huge health differential how it based on how their fight works. This isn't the only example in the game. If we went through all the duels, but okay. It's easier for me to hit vertical blinks than a 50-pound British lady that moves fast and makes annoying noises that tick. Okay. Hey, Kyler. Vertical shots, yeah. I just got hit one shot and press E, then Genji goes away. Tracer feels like a painful war of resources where I need to force enough out of her to make her leave rather than having to. Right, and that can be very similar with Tracer. Like Ana versus Tracer can be a very similar thing where it's like you're Ana, you're up against Tracer, and your health is going down. Here's your health bar, and you're like, okay, I'm fighting this Tracer, and my health bar is down to here. So I feel like I'm massively losing, except that was Tracer's third blink. Or Tracer's already used to recall and that was 2 blinks. So now I'm actually winning type thing. Like, it feels like you're losing, but you can know you're winning when you're at a quarter health, when you're at half health, because you know that she's having to use her blinks too rapidly. Like this situation that we just did with Zen and Genji, we can do the same thing with Ana and Tracer in the same way that the Zen can be winning. The Ana can be winning and know it in the Tracer setup. Pro tip to eliminate tracers, reduce their health to 0. Thank me later is in Cash App, the description of this video. I mean, Crunch's Cash App isn't in this video, the description of this video, but mine is. And if you want to send something, hey. Or if you guys want to sign up for Cash App, I do have a referral code there. First time you do a transaction, it'll send extra money to both you and me. And that first transaction could be getting a coaching session from me. Yes, that does work, and it's extra money for both of us. Okay. Okay, remember that. Let's tell you to play. Also, flame your main support for not peeling hard enough. There you go. There you go. Okay, I will give you guys another moment or two to get questions up there. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do like or subscribe. If you are looking to get coaching, because that is something I do, you can join my Discord in the description below. See what rates look like, see what sort of promos or events we have coming up, things like that. And if you liked this type of video, it was a bit different, I know, leave something in the comments so that I know, hey, you like this type of video. Now next tell us why, D.Va's in the meta so often, or why Roadhog's rarely meta, something like that. If you want something like that, you can, again, leave the comments, or you can jump into Discord, throw Ask Temporals up there, Overwatch questions up there. Let me know what you're looking for. You wish when you played Brig, the Trace Remains came out? Okay. How to fight Genji Tracer as Brig? Laugh at them. Laugh at them? Okay. So the real answer is going to be you have a couple things as Brig that are your priority. So let's just go down here. If we pull out Brig and we're up against Genji or Tracer, what's really going to happen is it's actually rare that we actually need to fight a Tracer for our own sake, or we need to fight a Genji for our own sake. Tracer might come pulse bomb us to stop us from rallying or something like that, but we're generally not fighting Tracer or Genji for our sake. We're fighting them for Zen or Ana's sake. So what you're generally going to do is you're going to go, hey, I don't want to let this Tracer chip me down. I want to have something like this where I have a physical wall. So let's actually not do that one. I want to do something like this where I have a physical wall that I can use. And this is great. Maybe my Ana's playing from here. Fine. Ana's playing from here. I have a physical wall. Great. So Tracer can't really chip me down very easily because I'm here with this wall. And if I can get the Tracer with a bash as she's coming through because she doesn't know I'm here, great. If I can catch her, that's fine. Otherwise, what I'm looking to do is go, hey, I have to make sure that I do, no matter what, immediately get this repair pack on my friend here who's in trouble. And then I'm going to go, hey, let me do some of the standard stuff here. I can get a swing, then a bash. I can get a bash into a swing, into a whip shot, that sort of thing. Like, that is still perfectly fine. Obviously, Tracer's going to leave at that point, even if you didn't manage to eliminate her. And your cooldowns are perfectly happy to trade for that. But I would say you want to make sure the priorities are that they're not allowed to chip down your barrier or your health. They're not allowed to chip down your barrier or your health. If you can get a surprise bash on them where it's like, aha, I'm bashing you from a direction that you're not aware of, that's fine. That's not a priority. And then your priority is got to get the repair pack on your Zen, your Anna, whatever, to make sure they have a little bit of, sustain, that they don't go down immediately, instantly. Start putting pressure immediately. Be close enough to put pressure immediately on them with your flail, with your whip. And then, yes, you are looking for a bash opportunity and you're going to take them out, etc. And it can also happen like this. Like if you do end up in a situation where you're both back here, yes, it's perfectly fine if it's like this as long as they're close enough, but you don't want to end up in a situation where they're allowed to poke at you. If they're allowed to poke at you, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle, and you don't want your Anna or your Zen to just have to Harmony Orb. You have to heal you while you try to preserve your shield. So you want to make sure that you do, in fact, have cover. And the way that you do that is you can take ownership of your Flex Support's rotations. You can call out where your team is rotating, where your team is going to play to support the next fight, etc. It's not at all rare in organized play or higher level, particularly high level ladder, for Brig players to go, we're going here, rotate left. And the Anna is like, huh, what? Okay, sure, whatever, as they're continuing to heal the monkey that's there. And you're sort of taking them left, etc. Hard work pays off. She gets whip shot 400 miles away. Uh, I play Brig and get blown up by Tracer all the time. Play more behind your cover then. Unless, again, if she knows she wants to pulse bomb you because she knows you're about to win a fight with Rally, that's a little different. Always M1 whip shot, shield bash M1 whip shot for easy clap. Okay. The more complicated comps would be cool to explain, like how healing comps operate, like how low healing comps operate in a future video. Sure, this thing here, this could be its own video, right? Like this is a thing that could definitely be its own video. So that's fine. Your friend's in trouble, okay? That's usually me screaming, get her off me. uh, Temporal, if you were offered a job as an L coach, would you do it? It depends completely. Like, let's get specific. What's my salary? How is the job guaranteed for the rest of the season, for the rest of the remaining season and the next season, for next season? Like, what are we looking at in terms of that? What do my responsibilities look like? What level of roster control do I have? Assuming head coach. If I'm assistant coaching, that's different, and I'm going to not expect any level of roster control, but I'm going to have to also sniff out what does the organization look like? What are they spending in terms of not just what are they spending, but does their org seem remotely organized? And again, if your org seems really well organized, everything's polished, everything's working well, maybe you're willing to do it for less. If the org is really poorly organized, it's going to require more to get me to potentially do it. Would I potentially be willing to coach for an owl organization? Yes. Is it a shoe-in that, hey, someone offered me, there isn't really a minimum contract, but a minimum contract to coach for a not great team? No, it is not necessarily guaranteed that I would take that. I would appreciate that so much, Brick leading me around just like I'm an old lady, little old lady. There you go. Asking so I know whether to pursue Owl in my life. Only you could be my coach. I hear you. I hear you. Adam, there you go. Adam says lol before losing to Atlanta in the pros. Yes, get Patreon, then a bunch of us can sponsor a mini guide. Okay. I can do strategic coach. I'm good with strategic coach for a team, but again, it would have to be the right situation. Like strategic coach can make a lot of sense, but it has to be it has to be a head coach that makes sense to work with. And Al looks like it's finally turned the corner and it's not a bunch of free riding staff anymore, etc. But you do have to have a situation where it works between the head coach and the strategic coach and any micro coaches or any other roles you have in terms of the strategic coaches able to do their job, but also the head coach needs them. I mean, if the head coach feels like, no, macro really is their specialty, that's what they're great at, etc. Well, okay, they can do that, but there are other head coach things that they should probably be doing. And then you sort of have a you're not doing your job and you're not letting me do my job type thing. Yeah. It depends. It depends. You can have strong macro coaches as head coaches that can work perfectly fine with other strategic or macro coaches too. Playing Protect the President on Brig is the most fun thing. Even better when an Anna decides to drink 5 tons, prowls the enemy, Team Reaper style. Yes, Patreon, Patreon. I'm down for anyone to duo Brig Protect the President to Diamond. No, Owl is dead. Overwatch 2 might kill Overwatch as well. Yeah, and that's the other thing that Blah's getting into here. Like that's why I'm getting into how long is it guaranteed for? How many seasons? Are there situations? What level of catastrophic event is required for an org to get out of the contract, etc.? It would depend on the contract. And I'm not unfamiliar with them, but they do vary from org to org. Okay. Maybe, Anton, maybe. Do you think it's worth finding a Brig duo as an ANA player? If you're doing organized play, absolutely. If you're playing with your team's support partner on ladder to practice as like, hey, extra practice that you guys are getting between scrims, absolutely. As something that you have to play with, that you need to play with at all times, and like you're not willing to play the game without them, probably not. You still need to have the ladder available to you as the option of going to the gym, effectively. Val says at Adam, Val still hardstuck gold because the other team was coached by legit RC, so you only came in second place. So you go higher, probably. Dive is prevalent. I mean, I already answered that. Yeah. Anton asks, if you dropped an OWL player into a bronze account and told them to get to GM, what do you expect their win rate to be? It actually varies a fair bit more than you think because the problem is like I expect their win rate through bronze can pretty easily be 70, 80%, and that'll hold true until let me rephrase that. That's not totally true. They could probably hold like a 70-ish, maybe a little lower win percent until like diamond, and then it kind of goes up. Like if you take your average owl player, they should be able to do something in the 60 to 70 range to get from bronze to diamond. In diamond, it should go up a little bit, and then it's going to depend if they hit some hiccups in master and get a little bit masters and get a little bit stuck. They shouldn't, or if they can just go do it. People who are used to it really depends on their background a little because like they can be thrown a little bit, and the games are wild. There's more DCs in bronze and silver and gold than there are in masters, and I guess they're not going to play any GM games if it's just bronze 2 GM. The game gets more structured, and a lot of them prefer it, and their win rates actually go up when they get into bronze and masters. That said, some of them will start to find the game perhaps a little more challenging in masters, but not most of them. Most of them are laddering enough that, yeah, I expect you're looking at something in the 60 to 70, and then you're going to go higher than that once you get to Diamond and Masters. Probably 95%. No, not 95%. It could be as high as 80. It could be. Uh, it's not going to be 95 though. The problem that they run into is they do still have DCs. They do still have people on their team who like just are so exploitable that it doesn't work out. It's not like they win, 9 out of 10 matches. They win a lot. They can win 8 out of 10 matches. That can absolutely happen. But 95 out of 100, unlikely. The Zarya guide earlier said 92% win rate. Yeah. Zarya's a particularly good hero for doing that with, though. Like, Zarya's a particularly good hero for doing that with, and A10 has done quite a few unranked to GMs, and he also started in High Plat or Diamond, which I told you their win rates go up when they get into Diamond and Masters. It was an unranked to GM, not a bronze to GM. Those are different. And again, the win rate is higher in Diamond and Masters because the game is more structured in the way that they're used to. Wasn't there an Owl player hard second plat? Was there? I know Krusty is like plat peak, I want to say, but he's coach for San Francisco Shock. He's not a player. It goes up at Diamond, yes. I would think they could just win every game in Bronze playing to frag. Depends on the hero, and no, not always. Yes, because your team is less throwy, exactly. Chipsa says he can't play at low elos because he has no idea why anyone is doing what they're doing. Right, their game sense betrays them, and it starts getting weird. Like, wait, what? Because again, they have game sense, but their game sense is tuned to, well, anyway. I was interested in this question because there's only so much one person can do in a 12-person match. Yep, exactly. And that's part of what makes getting better at Overwatch challenging, because the feedback mechanisms in Overwatch, because it's a 12-person game and has so many different variables, you doing something different and better doesn't immediately always give you good feedback, and you do saying something different work doesn't always immediately give you negative feedback because it's so clouded by having 12 people in it. I remember IDDQD doing bronze to GM way back, and he just massacred bronze. Sure, that absolutely happens. I'm gonna guess that he did it on Tracer or McCree, and yeah, those are not necessarily. I mean, Tracer is an easier hero to do it on than Zarya. McCree is probably a harder hero to do it on than Zarya, but yeah, I'm not terribly surprised by that. But bronze isn't the entire ladder, and you take a couple losses, like even just a couple losses in bronze will really throw off the game's confidence in quickly moving you through it. You'll move through bronze very quickly if you're taking like no losses, but let's say you get 2 losses in a row from DCs, the game, or from a DC followed by your team having, someone who is just clearly never used a mouse and keyboard before, that the other team recognizes and just exploits and punishes repeatedly. You're going to now have, you have 2 losses in a row. The game is going to be much more hesitant to move you up quickly 30, 40, 50 points at a time, like it usually would be willing to if you are winning 9 out of 10 games. You can have 100 limbs in a game and still lose it. That wasn't all that wild. I mean, it wasn't like common, but it wasn't all that wild back in the 5-round King of the Hill days. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Again, if you guys have enjoyed the content, please do like and subscribe. I do appreciate that. That helps out quite a bit. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.